Okay, so May, June 2020, question paper 12. So just like the other papers the other years, there's some questions that repeat themselves from question paper 11. If you want those full explanations, I'll circle the correct answer. Go to the question paper 11 video for the full explanations. So we're starting on 29. What is a disadvantage of increased specialization by a country? Okay. We'll start at the bottom. It results in lower costs for home produced goods. Okay, that's wrong. Well, it's correct, but it's an advantage, not a disadvantage. If we can make goods for lower costs, we can sell them at lower prices. Results in access to a greater variety of goods for consumers. Again, that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. And it reduces the potential for international trade. That's wrong. It increases the potential for international trade. It doesn't decrease the potential. We focus on making goods and services that we are best at making, which allows us to export more of a particular good and service and import more of a good and service that maybe we're not as good at making. But what it does do is it makes us become reliant on imports to meet all the needs, because we start to focus on making particular goods and services, which means that we're relying on importing other goods and services that we can't or no longer make. Okay, 28. There's been an appreciation of the currency's value. What effect will it have on the price of imports and price of exports? Okay, so again, we've gone through this in other videos. Depreciation, what does it do? Price of exports go down, so the total exports will go up. Price of imports go up, so the total imports will go down. Opposite effect if we have an appreciation. The price of exports will go up, so the total exports will go down, and the price of imports will go down, so the total imports will go up. Okay, so price of imports, we just need to match it now. We know that the price of imports, we can see here, will come down, so they become cheaper. And the price of exports will go up or become more expensive. Okay, which protectionist measure would be most suitable for a government to use to support the growth of exports of an industry? So an embargo is a ban on imports due to, let's say, a political difference between countries. So North Korea and America. America has an embargo on North Korea because they disagree politically with them. Therefore, they don't want to provide any revenue to the government of North Korea. A quota is also a limit on imports. It doesn't affect the exports. A tariff is a tax on imports, but a subsidy is what will be provided to the domestic manufacturers to help them to export at cheaper prices to other countries. It will allow them to increase their international competitiveness. Okay, 26 is from QP11. Go to that video for full explanation. So 25. Which country would be classified as the most developed based on the data? So remember, how do we determine whether a country is developed or not? We calculate it based on their real GDP. Okay, and in this case, because we're given GDP in population, it's going to be GDP divided by the population, which is going to give us the GDP per head, or essentially how much GDP is generated per person. Okay, so if we just do a simple calculation, 600 divided by 3 That's going to be 200, 700 by 2, 350, 12,000 by 40 will be 300, and then 15,000 by 100 will be 150. So we can see the one that has the highest real GDP per head will be B. Okay, question 24. Due to war, some people are living in absolute poverty. Okay, so just remember, what does absolute poverty mean? Absolute poverty means that, well, they're very poor and they can't even afford the basic necessities. Okay, so the basic things they need for life, such as food, water, and shelter, a roof over their head. Okay, what's the main indicator of this? So we can see here it would be receiving insufficient food for basic nutrition, because that is a basic need of life. Living in tents in temporary camps, okay, I'm sure they're going to be poor, but they still have a roof over their head. Lack of transport to escape abroad. Again, that's not going to affect their basic necessities that they need, and the dependency on aid for medical treatment is the same. It's not going to be an indicator of absolute poverty. It doesn't tell us that they can't afford any of these basic necessities. Only D will tell us that they can't afford any of those basic necessities. Okay, question 23 and 22 are both from QP11. So again, I'll circle the correct answer and just go to those videos for a full explanation. May, June 2020, question paper 11, go to that video. Okay. Table shows figures for the real GDP of a country. Quarter is 3 months. During which quarters was the country experiencing a recession? Okay. So remember, a recession is a period of 6 months or more where real GDP is falling. Okay, so quarters 1 and 2, we can see that GDP actually increased there, so that's not going to be a recession. Quarters 2 and 3, okay, we can see that GDP is decreasing from quarter 2 to quarter 3. That's only a period of 3 months, but we can see that from quarter 1 to quarter 2 it actually went up. So in that case, it wouldn't be a recession. We'd need to have another drop in real GDP the following 3 months. Hence why quarter 3 and quarter 4, from quarter 2 to quarter 3, so that's 3 months, we've gone down. And we've gone down from quarter 3 to quarter 4, so it becomes a recession in quarter 4, as that's 6 months consecutively where GDP is falling. So C will be our correct answer there. Okay, question 20. Information about job vacancies on a government website has led to a decrease in short-term unemployment. Now they're giving you an easy clue in the question. If you look at the March paper, we explained the difference between long-term and short-term unemployments. Okay, and we said that short-term is frictional, and the long-term type of unemployments, they are structural and cyclical unemployment. Okay, so what is frictional unemployment? That's where people are out of a job due to, for example, the nature of their job. Like an actor might take a job now and they might be out of work for 6 months before they get their next role. So once we identify short term, we know it's frictional. Cyclical is due to a lack of AD. Structural and technological are both structural unemployment. Structural can be technological or regional. So due to advances in technology or due to a change in demand for a product, which means that a town or a city, for example, as regional unemployment would no longer have jobs available. Okay, 19. Why are governments responsible for the defense of a country? So, the reason is because it's impossible to charge a price for defense. So what does that mean? That means that they're non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So they'll be public goods, right? And we know that the government has to provide public goods. It's not because it prevents individual citizens from having access. It's not because only governments can manufacture weapons. That's not true. Private companies can manufacture weapons also. And it's not because providing defense is expensive. It's because of the fact that it is non-excludable and non-rivalrous, which makes it a public good. Okay. Remember, there's been previous questions in papers before giving an outline of different areas of government expenditure. National defense, law and order, they always come under public goods. So that's where they take the money to provide the public goods from. Okay, question 18. A government increased revenue by increasing taxes on firms. What did it increase? Okay, it increased profit tax. And they're trying to trick you out here, because what is that also called? It's also called corporation tax, a tax on the profits of companies. We know that it's not a sales tax or a value-added tax, because they are types of indirect taxes, which are not taxes on the firms, but they are taxes on the good or the service themselves. And an inheritance tax is tax on the money or the assets that is left to an individual after, for example, members of their family die. 16 and 17 are also from QP11. So again, circle the correct answers and please go to those videos if you don't understand why this answer is correct for the full explanation. Okay, 15. When do economies of scale take place? Okay, so they do not take place in the short run. They take place in the long run as we expand and as we grow the business. It's not because the variable factors are fixed. If the variable factors are fixed, it's going to become very difficult for us to decrease our average cost of production, which is exactly what the economies of scale is. It's a decrease in our average costs as our business grows or gets bigger. So the same thing here, if the factors of production are fixed, it's unlikely that as we expand, well, we may not be able to expand in the first place, but we need to be able to expand to reduce our average costs. So what we need is the factors of production to be variable, so that as demand changes or as we have an aim to grow our business, we can start to produce more goods and services, and as we produce more output, we can decrease our average costs when we do that. Okay, question 14. Which statement proves that there has been an increase in productivity for a factory making tractors? Okay, so remember that an increase in productivity is same amount of resources, but we're making more goods and services. So if we look at A, we've taken on 10% more of workers and we've had a 10% increase in tractors. So there's been no increase in productivity there. We've had a 10% increase in how many goods and services we've made, but we don't have the same level of resources. We have an extra 10% of labor. So we've actually got the same productivity. Starting a night shift leads to an increase in production of 10 tractors a day. Okay, again, that's not going to show that our productivity is increased, because we're changing our level of resources again by starting a night shift. And production increases as more workers are hired. That's the same as A. We're looking for, does each worker make more goods and services? So our correct answer is B. output per worker, so each individual worker has increased how much they can make from 3 tractors to 4 tractors every month. Same level of resources, producing more. Okay, 13 is from QP11. Go to that video for full explanation. Question 12. We're shown fixed and total variable costs at different levels of output for a firm. What happens as output rises? So we've got average fixed cost, average variable cost here. What happens as output rises? If we know what happens with our average fixed costs and average variable costs, we can easily calculate it, okay, or easily know the answer. The answer is that average fixed costs fall, right? Average fixed costs will always fall as our output goes up because our fixed cost will stay the same. So our average fixed cost here would be 10. It would be 1,000 divided by 100. Then it would be 5. It would be our total fixed cost divided by our output, which would be 5. Then it would be 3.33. And then it would be 2.5 at a higher level of output. So we can see that as we increase our output, our average fixed cost comes down. Therefore, B will be wrong. It doesn't go up, it goes down. We've just shown that. Our average variable cost remains constant, so we don't need to calculate that because we know what the correct answer is. But if you wanted to, you would just have to divide your total variable cost by your output. And then, because we know A is right, you should see that if you do that, you will find it doesn't remain the same and it doesn't rise. It is likely also coming down here, which we can see. Okay, but that's not an option that we're given. So question 11 is also from QP11. Go to that video for full explanation. Question 10 is also from QP11. Go to that video for full explanation. Okay, this is going to be a quick one. So what would most likely cause a person to increase their savings? Okay. A reduction in tax-free saving schemes, what's that going to do? That's going to decrease their savings. So reducing tax-free saving schemes means that we're giving them less option to keep their money in tax-free schemes, right? So we're reducing their ability to save tax-free. Interest rates falling means that less people will save and more people will borrow, so they won't increase their savings, they'll decrease their savings. And a fall in income is the same. If the amount of money that we have goes down, well, then we're going to be less likely to save our money. So the one that would increase the savings is a decision to plan for retirement, where we know that we're going to need to increase our savings so that we can retire comfortably. Okay, Saudi Arabia specializes in oil extraction and refining. This is a capital-intensive industry with highly skilled labor. What might be a disadvantage of this specialization? Okay, so remember, specialization is where we focus on making goods or services that we can produce with an advantage in comparison to other countries. Okay, so what's a disadvantage of that going to be? So, in this case, oil companies might have increased training costs as each worker needs 9 different needs. That's not going to be a disadvantage of specialization. In fact, the training costs or the training that workers are going to get is actually going to be an advantage for them. Training or education is always an advantage for a worker because it allows them to have more skills. Oil companies may find it difficult to achieve economies of scale. Okay, that may be true, but it's not a disadvantage of specialization. That would be just affecting their ability to achieve economies of scale. And specialization is actually more likely to achieve economies of scale because we said we can produce goods and services with an advantage in comparison to other countries, which means that we can probably produce them at a lower cost than other countries can, which would mean that our average costs would come down and we would achieve economies of scale. And resource allocation is not efficient because a narrow range of goods are produced. Okay, so what this is not assessing is the fact that we can produce oil extraction and refining here. So Saudi Arabia can produce a lot of oil, but because they can produce it at such a low cost and with an advantage compared to other countries, they can export the excess and they can import a wider range of goods and services. So consumers may actually get more choice as a result of specialization, not a narrower range of goods. But a disadvantage would be workers may face a restricted range of job opportunities. So if the oil dries up in Saudi Arabia, a huge percentage of their labor force is based in that industry for their jobs. If that industry goes, they may find it hard to get jobs in other industries because they may not be available or they may not have the skills in order to get that new job. Okay, question 7. The price of bread rose by 5% and quantity demanded fell by 4. What's the PED? So remember, our formula for PED is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Okay, so we just put them over each other. Quantity demanded is minus 4%. They tell us that in the question. Divided by or over plus 5%. When we calculate that, we should be left with minus 0.8. Okay, so we can see that B is the correct answer. Okay, the diagram shows the supply curve for an individual grower of tomatoes and for the total market supply. So, what explains the similarity of the two curves? Okay, so as costs rise, growers need to get a higher price to increase their output. Okay, let's see. We don't have any information about their costs. All we know is that as the price rises, they will supply more because they know that they're going to achieve more profit. And that's in both of these here, right? For the market supply and both for the individual supply. So we don't have information on their costs. At the lower prices, each grower supplies more tomatoes. So what can we see here? Well, if we look at it, we can see that, oh sorry, what am I saying there? I've read that wrong. Apologies. So as costs rise, growers need to get a higher price to increase their output. Sorry, that is true. Because if we look at it again, as we can see the price goes up, they need to get this higher price in order to make their output increase, right? So as the price goes up, they'll increase their output because they're in search of more profit. At the lower prices, each grower supplies more tomatoes. So at the lower prices here, we can see the higher the price, the more tomatoes they supply. So that's wrong. Profitability per unit is the same for all growers irrespective of output. That's wrong. Profitability per output is going to depend on the company, what kind of economies of scale they can achieve, what their cost per unit is, what their selling price per unit is. And supply is not always influenced by price. We can see supply is influenced by price. The higher the price, the more supply will be released to the market. Okay, so apologies for that one, I read it wrong initially. Okay, question 5. What is a cause of market failure? Okay, so a cause of market failure is the existence of a monopoly. Many firms is a good thing. It's not a cause of market failure. Profit maximization is a good thing. Firms that are responsive to changes in demand and supply will be rewarded. That's a good thing. Firms who are not responsive will be punished. That's also a good thing. And specialization is not a cause of market failure again. Specialization is as a result of us realizing we can make goods and services more competitively than other countries or other competitors can. But a monopoly is a cause of market failure because it means that consumers will be paying higher prices and have less choice for goods and services. Okay, question 4. Microeconomics analyzes choices in various situations. What area of economic study does it not include? So we're looking for the macro concept. And the macro concept would be economic growth. A, B, and D would all look at the study and behavior of individuals, households, firms, and individual markets, which is what microeconomics studies. Macroeconomics studies the whole economy, which would be affected by the policies for economic growth. Okay, question 3 is a question that's come up. I've seen it in numerous past papers. Okay, and every time that it's come up, it's always been mentioned in the examiner reports is that students have got it wrong quite often. So we need to calculate the opportunity cost, but we're told we're calculating the opportunity cost only in the 2 years of completing the apprenticeship. So first of all, we need to see what is she going to get for the apprenticeship. She's going to get 10k per year. So she's going to get 20k for doing the apprenticeship, right? After that, she expects to earn 25,000 per year. That information is not valid because we're only told the opportunity cost in the 2 years, and this 25 will only happen after that. Or she could take an unskilled job which would pay 16k per year. So if she takes the unskilled job, she would earn 32,000 in 2 years. Or if she takes the apprenticeship, she'll earn 20,000 in 2 years. So what's the opportunity cost? It's the 12,000 that she won't earn as a result of doing the apprenticeship instead of taking the unskilled job. Okay, question 2. The diagram shows a production possibility curve. Which of these points shows the largest possible output of Y, product Y currently achievable? Okay, so let's look at the points that are achievable. D is achievable, C is achievable, and B is achievable. A is not achievable because it is outside our PPC, which means that we don't have enough resources to make that level of output. So all we need to do then is we need to calculate which one would have the largest output of Y. So if we take D straight across, C straight across, and B straight across, what we can see is that our output of Y will be the largest at point B. Okay, and finally, in 2016, 20 million barrels of oil and 1.6 million barrels of natural gas were discovered in Texas, the US. Which factor of production has increased in the US due to this discovery? Okay, that will be land. Remember that land is raw materials or natural resources, and natural gas is a natural resource, as is oil, right? They're found in the in an economy or in a country without having to do anything else, right? Labor would be workers, enterprise would be owners, and capital would be, let's say, if we're extracting the oil, we might need capital to extract it. But if we just discover more oil or more gas, that would be an increase in land, an increase in the natural resources that we have available.